In May 2025, China didn't bomb America's farms. They vanished from them. No warnings, no press briefings, just silence. Followed by billions in soybean, pork, and wheat deals deleted in a digital heartbeat. Over 600,000 metric tons of crops now sit rotting in Midwestern silos. Families across the Heartland are pawning tractors just to keep the lights on. And Trump's most loyal base, rural farmers, are reeling from a trade war they never saw coming. The scariest part? This wasn't some freak accident. It was deliberate policy, planned, precise. And if you think this crisis ends at the U.S. border, you're missing the global cracks already forming. Back in May 2025, more than 600,000 metric tons of American soybeans sat stuck in silos across the Midwest. They weren't delayed by bad weather, insects, or weak demand. They were simply unwanted. President Trump's second-term tariffs had made U.S. crops undeliverable. In response, Beijing didn't hold a press conference. It issued procurement orders, quietly telling Chinese importers to cancel American contracts and shift purchases to Brazil, Argentina, and Russia instead. Bloomberg called the move a supply chain strategy, but its effect was swift and brutal. U.S. farms lost access to the world's biggest agricultural buyer overnight. Imports of American wheat, pork, and soybeans from China dropped to levels not seen since the pandemic. Meanwhile, Brazil's soybean exports jumped 17% in Q2 2025, according to Reuters. Ports in Shanghai that once handled U.S. grain are now fully running on Latin American shipments. So what happens when your largest customer walks away for good? That's when the damage multiplies. Reuters reports Chinese state buyers have signed long-term contracts through 2030 with Brazil and Argentina. These deals secure pricing, shipping, and delivery on a scale the U.S. simply can't match under Trump's current tariffs. AgriSource says U.S. soybean exports are forecast to drop to 1.5 billion bushels in 2025, down from 1.865 billion last year. Its president, Dan Bassett, notes that U.S. soybeans priced at $10.60 per bushel can't compete with Brazil's $9 offers, especially when Chinese tariffs still hover near 10%. Despite a brief pause. Cold storage units in Iowa are now filled with pork that was supposed to ship to China. In late April, Beijing canceled a 12,000-ton pork order, the biggest single cancellation since the pandemic began. This isn't a temporary tactic, it's a long-term shift. And with Chinese buyers already locked into multi-year contracts, the U.S. isn't just losing trade, it's being pushed out of the market entirely. But the bigger question is, who's left to pick up the tab? Between 2017 and 2022, the number of farms under 10 acres shrank by 14%, while farms making over $2.5 million in revenue more than doubled, according to USDA census data. During the first round of tariffs, bankruptcies jumped 24% in a single year, the highest rate in a decade. According to Food and Water Watch, the top 10% of bailout recipients received 54% of the federal aid. The top 1% took home over $183,000 each, while the bottom 80% got less than $5,000. JBS, a Brazilian multinational, received $78 million in U.S. pork contracts, despite being a foreign firm that controls half the American pork market. Tyson received another $29 million. Together, the two giants dominate more than 70% of U.S. pork supply. What was called a safety net looks more like a corporate buyout. Ben Murray from FWDW summed it up best. The trade war didn't shield family farms, it cleared them out. And if rural red states supported Trump hoping for economic strength, what they got instead was consolidation. So how did Trump's most loyal voters become the first to suffer? He won 433 out of 444 farming-reliant counties in 2024. Yet those same counties now top the list for insolvency, according to Investigate Midwest. Rural areas in Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska, where corn, soybeans, and beef dominate, are seeing the steepest drop-offs in exports. Meanwhile, states like California and Florida, with more diverse agricultural production, are holding steadier. The National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition reports that since January, more than $6 billion in climate adaptation and regional food system funds have been either frozen or cut entirely. The first programs to go? Ones that helped small farmers shift to local or specialty markets. Secretary Brooke Rollins recently told Fox News, "We don't believe a bailout will be necessary." But that confidence doesn't match what's happening on the ground, especially in the southern states where USDA field offices are shutting down. These are the very places where minority and low-income farmers depend the most on support services. If the next farming crisis mirrors the last, just deeper, can we still pretend it's accidental? John Boyd Jr. grows soybeans, corn, and wheat in Virginia. He's a fourth-generation black farmer, yet in 2025 he can't even get a loan. His local USDA office closed in the name of efficiency, and his last harvest sold for less than it cost to produce. Speaking to The Guardian, Boyd said, "This administration is putting black farmers on the chopping block and mocking us with no accountability." Between 2017 and 2022, the number of black farmers dropped by 8%, while white farmers declined by under 1%, according to the latest USDA census. This isn't just economic pressure, it's structural exclusion. And when trade is frozen, field offices are closed, and bailout funds go to billion-dollar corporations. Who's left to survive? Not the small producers, not those who voted for something better. So here's the real question. Are tariffs a road to prosperity, or are they a quiet signal that some communities are expendable? Because what's coming next might remove any remaining doubt. As U.S. exports collapse, food prices are surging across Africa and Southeast Asia. Basic imports like soy and wheat feed have climbed 10–15% since April 2025, according to the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization. Countries like Egypt, Kenya, and the Philippines are scrambling to replace U.S. supplies with shipments from Argentina and India, often paying 12–17% more. Meanwhile, nations with weaker currencies and low food reserves are on the brink of rationing. In its April bulletin, the FAO warned that a prolonged breakdown in U.S.-China grain trade could destabilize already fragile food systems, especially in places where imported aid intersects with unstable currencies. Humanitarian groups are now racing to lock in contracts, while delays at ports and a shortage of shipping containers add to the chaos. The Port of Portland and other Pacific Northwest terminals report export volumes down over 51% since tariffs came back into effect. But the scariest part isn't the price spike. It's that these shortages aren't caused by natural disasters or conflict. They're the result of policy decisions. And if the global food system is buckling this early, what happens when the 2025 harvest season begins? More than 22,000 U.S. farms are expected not to plant this year. Bloomberg attributes this to skyrocketing input costs, collapsing export prices, and the loss of long-term deals to Brazil and Russia. According to USDA data, the number of farms harvesting soybeans dropped nearly 11% from 2017 to 2022, wiping out a decade of steady growth. And now, that decline is speeding up. Some farmers are selling off not just their equipment, but their land. In Kansas, one co-op sold 3,000 acres just to pay off debt from broken pork contracts. And younger generations? Many are walking away entirely, as federal aid dries up and commodity prices nosedive. Soybean futures fell to $9.30 per bushel in May, a 14% drop from last year. In Iowa, farmers now earn 35% less per acre compared to 2020, according to AgriSource. With China no longer importing and new buyers tied up in long-term alternatives, there's no real recovery in sight. If family farms sit idle this season, what takes their place might not speak English or pay taxes in the U.S. Trump's 2025 tariff wave is being pitched as economic patriotism, but it's revealing just how vulnerable America's farm system is when political battles override real market strategies. The National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition says that since January, over $6 billion in programs supporting local food chains, minority farmers, and climate-resilient practices have been frozen or dismantled. The Environmental Working Group found that the 2018-2019 bailout efforts didn't help farms survive. They accelerated consolidation. Massive monocrop farms grew 18% between 2017 and 2022, while thousands of mid-sized operations vanished. Secretary Rollins claims the administration is finding new global markets, but Ben Lilliston of the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy says otherwise. Trade flows have stalled, and buyers no longer trust the U.S. as a steady partner. If strength means shooting ourselves in the foot, and stability means being tied to two mega meat processors, what exactly are we protecting? In the heart of rural America, it's not the soil losing life, it's the faith in leadership. In Iowa, farmer confidence dropped 43% in Q2 2025, according to Purdue's Ag Barometer, and capital investment plans hit a 10-year low. Generational transitions are being pushed back or canceled. And rural schools now report the lowest fall enrollment in 15 years as farm families head to cities. One fourth-generation Missouri soybean farmer told the WSJ, "We're not worried about weather anymore. We're worried that we don't matter." This isn't just theory. Deere's Q2 earnings call showed an 11% drop in equipment orders from small-scale farmers, a clear sign replanting isn't happening. Community banks across the Midwest are reporting more loan defaults and USDA field offices are shutting down. Moves critics say amount to a quiet retreat. If the people who fed this country for over a century now believe they're disposable, what happens when they decide to stop planting altogether? Headlines call it a temporary slump, but the numbers tell a different story, a long-term pullback. Soybeans are stagnant, pork is canceled, grains replaced. And behind the trade war's economic damage is something even deeper, a cultural collapse. Farms don't bounce back with next quarter's profits. They disappear over generations. And if China has moved on and rural America is being outbid by giant international firms, then this is no longer about tariffs. It's about whether the U.S. has any vision left for feeding the world or even feeding itself. Now it's your turn. Was this breakdown unstoppable, or did someone plan it? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you think this is as bad as it gets, wait until you find out who's buying up America's water while the fields run dry. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to check out our next video that's live now.